So I hear you have a story.
Oh,
A recent story. I love listening to your stories.
I feel like sometimes I just talk and talk, but I'm glad you get something out of it.
Yeah.
We did that podcast, remember back when we had John McManus, our Montgomery County treasurer, in, and he was talking about the FAN program, fraud alert notification system. So I kind of took that information and practice what I preach is what I do. So I obviously went back to my some of my clients, and I was like, hey, let's make sure that we've got you set up for this, and that in some cases I had investors from out of the area who have properties that they still have holdings here and notes and things like that. So we're going through and we're doing all of this. And when John was talking about it, I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. I have to make sure I do it. Went back, set up mine, made sure my family was all set up, and did all of this stuff. And then it goes to, hey, make sure your clients know about it. So I send information to clients all the time. Well, sometimes I send information to my clients. I definitely try to keep them in the loop on things that I hear about in this respect. But this was one of those messages that you send out and you hope somebody's going to actually go through and do it. And in this case, this is property that I continue to manage for my clients. So we've done this for 14 years. Gosh, time flies. And I was like, hey, did you go through? Did you do this? Da, 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 da. And checked properties. Everything's good. Well, he had one property that a tenant turned into an owner. So he has a mortgage. He's the bank on the mortgage for this tenant. It kind of slips your mind. You weren't thinking about it because it's not active in a property management scenario or anything like that. And while we were talking on the phone, I was like, well, I didn't even think about this, but you still have holding interest in this, so maybe we should check it. It had been sold in July of last year. And I was like, what? Wait, what? Wait a minute. First of all.
So how did you find it?
First of all, how did they sell it? And he, as the bank holder, mortgage holder, not get paid off.
Was it the tenants or the people that lived there sold it?
So, yes, the deed showed our person sold it to another person. And I'm like, what? Not very good language at that point. Because I have my investor on the phone. And I'm like, wait a minute. Something's not right. Because the recorder's office can take 6 weeks, right? And so I'm digging through this, and I'm like, what in the world? There was a July transfer and an October transfer. So they did a transfer in July that when I saw the transfer for October, one triggered the other. And I'm like, wait, what is going on?
So this wasn't like some random Nigerian prince?
No. So, and we actually found this in November. So I know it's January, February when this is being recorded.
Was still only like a month later.
This was
after the second one.
After a few months. So like a few months after you're told about this program and what they're doing and how this is impacting our area, deed scams are real. And it is happening in Montgomery County and in Greene County. It is happening in our country, in our state, and it's happening abroad. And so what I quickly figured was, oh shit, like this is major. So the one in July didn't trigger anything because we didn't have this set up. We heard about this when John was here and do this program. I heard from Stacy Benson Taylor. I think it was right in mid-July when I heard her speak. And I'm like, okay, I need to take this information back and start handing this out, right? But October happens, and I'm like, October, I find it in November on my call with him.
But you never got a notification?
We didn't get a notification, it wasn't set up.
Oh, okay.
So in November, I'm having this conversation with my investor client, say, did you do this? We had it on the others. I said, but we need to check the other property where you are a mortgage holder, right? So now that brings up this, we'll call it our fifth property to take a look at. So as I'm talking to him and I pull up this fifth property, I'm like, oh shit, wait a minute. How did this transfer? Like, there's a sale. And he's like, what do you mean there's a sale? I didn't get anything. I'm like, hold on. So we're digging through. We find the October date first. go through, try to get all the public records. At the same time that I'm communicating with him, I'm on the website. I'm going through trying to find documents. I jump to my second screen, send an email to the title company that we use and said, hey, I need your help digging in on this. What can you find out?
Was the title company used?
No. So here, remember the conversation with John is that individuals can have transactions happen. They can take the paperwork down to the recorder's office, and the recorder's office is required to file these. So when we started digging into this, first the October date was that there was a minimal amount of money that was transacted on record, but it didn't make sense because the owner wasn't our person. And that's what prompted us to dig deeper. And so then we found the July where our person sold to this company individual, and that individual company is who sold it back to her in October. And I'm like, wait a minute. So
she was your original, and then she was the buyer in October?
yeah. So here's the strange scenario of what we are looking at, and it is a scam. It is something fraudulent that is going on. So going to the July transaction, which would have been the first thing that should have been flagged, right? If this system had been in place, had we known about and actually registered this property in July, then theoretically there would have been an alarm. It's an email that you would receive that says that there may be a recent document recorded that you need to check into it. Now, this is after the fact, okay? So it wouldn't have stopped it, but it would have at least given us a leg up to say, hey, what's going on? We need to dispute this quitclaim deed that has been filed. One, when you use a realtor profession, when you use a title company, there are steps to the procedure that take place that validates the information. And a title search is the first thing that comes up when a new party is going to buy a property, that you want to make sure that there isn't any liens or encumbrances or any mortgages that need to be paid off in order for that deed to transfer ownership.
Yeah.
So by the scam, individual says, oh, we don't need a title company, we can just file it ourselves. That should be your first red flag. But in this case, the person who we have a relationship with as the tenant, who's the owner because they have a mortgage with my investor, failed to notify us of a change or anything like that. But worse, I don't want to say anything, I guess that's going to get me in trouble, but they signed documents as my investor's name. She signed her name and used the investor's company name on the document. She has no authority for the investor. She had no right to be able to sign that off. And so when we start thinking about, well, what stops this from happening? I couldn't just sign your name. Could I sign your name
Does it have to be notarized?
to somebody that doesn't know me? Yeah, because somebody doesn't know me. But if somebody saw us on here and they're like, well, those two gay ladies are there and they talk about things, and they would know that there's a Tammy and that there's an Ellie, right? They would know that there's two entities.
Yeah.
So if I just sign my name, Tammy Murphy, Ellie Merker, Solmberger, sorry, Mike, that there's a distinction, right? It's not just one name. So she signed her name with a business name, an LLC. So that investor of mine is registered in the state of Ohio. His LLC is registered in the state of Ohio. There is legal documents and an authority action page, right? So if I question an LLC, somebody comes to me as a buyer and they're like, well, I'm buying it in the name of my LLC. Great. I'm going to look up that LLC recording.
Yeah.
And I'm going to see, does that name match the name that who I'm dealing with? And if it doesn't, I have to ask. I have to do my due diligence, right? In this case, the recorder's office did not verify the LLC.
Do they have to?
Apparently, they have to take the documents as they're presented and say that that's it. but they're notarized, and that is the issue. So there is
Who
a
notarized it?
notarized stamp on here. And so when I look at this first document from July, I've got 3 different parties that I'm already questioning. Who are you? What the hell are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why is this fraudulently signed? Because I know my client hasn't been informed, hasn't been paid off, and certainly didn't know anything about this.
So is your client still getting a mortgage payment?
No, they're in default of the mortgage payment.
Oh, okay.
So he actually can foreclose on this property, right? So fast forward to,
So he wasn't getting a mortgage payment from like
so he hasn't had a mortgage payment.
July or August to
Yeah.
November?
Yeah. So that's a whole thing. But the foreclosure process is a longer involved process, and
Yeah.
you start getting into all of this stuff and you start figuring out, is this the thing? Well, not only are we not getting payment, but now you've committed fraud. We're coming after you.
Yeah.
Like, there is serious implications to what's going on. But I'm sitting here thinking, wait a minute, we just did a podcast on this. We just had all of this information. So I get that the July we would have missed, but October, and it just happened. Like, literally, if it takes 6 weeks for the recorder's office to get it where it's digital and you now have it.
Yeah.
When I'm having this conversation with my client, it's just hit their system. So this just happened in effect to where we could just now catch this. And I'm like, what is going on here? And now the July was from her to him, right? Notarized. And the October is from him back to her for less money. And I'm like, what is going
Why?
on?
What's the point?
Same notary.
Is that notary
So-
part of the recorder's office or just a random notary?
So while I have my client on the phone, I get a hold of Stacy Benson. I'm like, we have a serious problem. I need to know what's going on. Like, we were signing up for this. This just happened. Like, we are right in the thick of all of this is happening. And of course, some information you're not going to get. They're not going to tip their hand or anything like that.
Yeah.
But she immediately puts my client through the process of what he needs to do to file a dispute, overnight this information, do all of this stuff, which he has to have notarized. I mean, so what is the purpose in having these requirements and it be fraudulently done by somebody and there's no catch to it?
Right.
My client is jumping through all these hoops to protect himself now after the fact, and this person was able to illegally do all of this stuff fraudulently and not have any of this happen. And it's like, where is the stopgate? This is really a serious, serious question. She was phenomenal, and she has this program and all of these things that could do it. And it's turned over to the prosecutor's office. It's now January. We haven't heard jack from anybody. Like, they have all the information. Nothing has been done. Basically, it's going to be up to my investor client as to how he wants to proceed on a civil matter, but the county will proceed on a county level. So the prosecutor's office apparently goes after this. I don't know if they wait until they have enough in order to go after them, but the one thing that I did ask while we had her on the phone was, is this a notary that you're already aware of, that there's already a problem with? And she paused and she said, yes, it is one we are aware of. So we do not accept documents from that person any longer. We know there are issues. And I'm like, well, if you knew there were issues, how did this get through? Not to put blame anywhere, but that is the first thing that you're wondering is, if you knew this, why didn't that in itself stop it? Or now you know it, so we're enough of this pile that's stacking up.
So what is the point of this though? Like, just to get your mortgager off of it?
It doesn't release the mortgage. So it doesn't do that. The mortgage is still there. It is still of record. It is still due. The lady still owes the money. Can still foreclose for non-payment on the mortgage, but the title is clouded. So the title now has these issues. So by him now trying to do the right thing, we'll take court action in order to clear it, in order for him to be able to sell it, get his money out of this.
Yeah, but there has to be some kind of reason the criminals do what they do? Is there money?
Normally, they're getting money. So here's the thing. We don't need to use a title company. I'll buy your property. You don't need to worry about it. Here, I'll give you 10 grand and you're good. The normal process is they get it easy there, then they turn around and they flip it. I'm going to sell this property for $30,000. Oh, I'll sell this property for $50,000. It may change multiple times, typically, because the scam is to make the money here, make the money here, make the money here. Maybe I sell it multiple times at the same time, and I'm collecting from individuals because, hey, this guy's been waiting for a house under $100,000, and he'll pay me cash, and he won't even blink. And yeah, we'll do a quick claim deed and not use a title company, and it can be done next day. I've got a notary person who can notarize everything. Sounds good to me. Here's your $20,000. Well, let's go. As soon as it changes hands, and then a second or third or fourth, however many times, now you've clouded the title that many more times. You've created issues all the way. So what usually happens, as John had shared with us, is that people don't even find out that there's been some action on their deed until they're legitimately going to sell the property or legitimately going to do something of their own, right?
Yeah.
Take a second mortgage, do something where there is actually something now that pulls that title search that says, wait a minute, you don't own this anymore. What do you mean I don't own this? My client is the investor mortgage holder. So he's not the owner of record, but he is a mortgage holder, which the mortgage has to be paid in order to clear the title, in order for a new buyer to own it, except when you circumvent the process. So you break the rules. It's easier for you to do what you're trying to do illegally than it is for you to do what it is legal. Makes no sense, right?
Yeah.
So my call
But
is...
I thought most of the time it would sell, and it never goes back to the original person.
Correct. So that's why I was like, wait a minute. It's the same parties that are involved on both sides. What is really going on? Like... Is that more of a laundering of money scenario? I don't know what the details are, but I'm looking at it. Did she get money here and then she turns around and she gives half the money back? Like, what sense does that make? It doesn't matter. You broke the law. You were fraudulently representing my client, and we're going to go after you. Like, there are actions to come from this, but I got a notary name. I have a company name, and then I have her name. And I'm like, anything that comes across that is any of those parties, first thing I'm doing, calling the authorities. Sorry, not sorry. It's serious to me. And the fact is that think about your elderly people. Think about somebody who's not tech savvy. How quickly this can happen. This is one of the leading scams and fraudulent activity that is taking place right now with the deeds, that you have national companies that are coming out to say, for a small fee, we'll protect your deed, we'll put a lock on there, we'll do all this.
Title lock.
Yes.
I hear that commercial all the time.
Yes. So they'll charge you a small fee in order for you to get notified if there's anything that registers against your deed. Well, thank you, Montgomery County, for having this program where people don't have to pay a fee. You go online and you can register your property, your family's property, anything that you may have a concern about, and you can receive an email. You're going to get that email after something has filed against the deed, so it is still going to be after the fact. You're still going to be dealing with the prosecutor's office legal recourse, but at least you will know it instead of a month, 6 months, years passing, and now you go to sell it and you're found out you're not even the owner anymore. So in John's example, he was talking about somebody where this had passed a number of times and now they weren't even of record on owning it for a while. That's heartache because you are SOL trying to get your money out of a property that you don't own anymore.
Yeah. So with your situation, did you or your client ask her?
So that's part of the problem, is that there's no communication because she's defaulted on the mortgage, right? I'm not just going to show up at the property.
Right.
obviously, that's not my position to do. I will be at the courthouse. I will be involved. I will be representing with my client as to what we are aware of, what transacted. And it's very unfortunate. You know, I will say, when I work with somebody as an investor, it's to long-term figure out what's in their best interest, what are they trying to do, how can we make that work, representing our communities and talking about the advantages of why buying property here makes sense. You know, he's not from our area, but he's been a long-term investor in some of our communities, and he has worked with people who otherwise would not have been able to get into a home or get a loan or a mortgage, right? And this is one of those people who has turned around and bit the hand that fed them. And it is such a sad representation of the fact that this would burn a normal person to say, why would I ever do that again? I'm not dealing with people. I don't like people. They don't do what they're supposed to do. I'm not chasing the money. I'll keep my money in the bank and make a little bit of interest over having to deal with, now I have to hire an attorney, file a lawsuit, and go through all of this. And it is really detrimental to the process, because private investors and people who do those types of programs really represent an underserved demographic that I represent, and I want to make sure it has options for housing as well.
Yeah.
And then you have something that comes along like this and sours the whole thing, and it's so stinking frustrating. It really does test my whole
belief in the system.
The belief in the system. It tests my theory of people,
Morality clause.
my morality clause. I just want to go, you know, literally take hold of somebody and say, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Why do you have to screw this up? Why damage somebody? Like, what did we do to you? Obviously nothing.
But I think that's with all criminals. Like,
it is. And so there is that real reality that the quick, easy grab takes advantage of somebody. And if that's what you're looking for, then yeah, you're looking for all the ways that you can work outside of the system in order to make it happen. And again, if I'm the rule follower, I'm going to work for the best interest of my clients, and we're going to follow those rules, and we're going to try to think outside of the box in legal ways. We're going to try to accommodate those things that we're trying to overall accomplish, but we're not going to be taken advantage of. We're not going to be taken advantage of lightly, and we will certainly do what we can for the legal recourse of it. So it was just sad, and almost instantaneous. Like, this could have been on live feed, like the facial expressions, the slew of language that was let loose on that phone call.
Yeah.
And really literally riled up to the point that it's so frustrating, because it happened to a really good person. Not saying that even a bad person deserves something bad to happen to them, but sometimes you better be sure that accountability comes to play. And I do think if you do wrong, karma's going to come back and get you. And if it happens to be a jail cell, sorry but not sorry, it's going to happen.
yeah. So what would be like, you know, just a foreclosure and then a sale to get new people in, so your client starts making money again, is now drawn out into a potentially years process.
And that has been the holding factor, is that, you know, you work with somebody to give them some flexibility to get caught up, make new arrangements, let's do this, let's do that, and you give latitude for that person to take advantage of the situation. One of the other things that we kind of hit on when we were talking with John, I can't wait to get him back in here, but we had talked about that period of time where tenants were given COVID relief and they didn't have to make rent payments, but they were receiving money so that they, not being able to work, were able to keep up with their bills, and people chose not to pay rent even though they had funds that were given to them. All that did was hurt our mom and pop investors the people who really had this as an additional source of income, or maybe their sole source of income from whatever length of time that they've owned property and gained that equity portfolio, right? And we saw that devastation and how it impacted people, that they weren't given relief. They still had to make their mortgage payments or lose interest from not having that money in their own bank accounts. And those are the things that you have to realize, that something free doesn't mean that it's free. Somebody's paying for it, right? And ultimately, again, you hurt somebody who's trying to do the right thing for somebody who's trying to just slip aside and not really have that responsibility.
Yeah, so I feel like most people have the mentality like, oh, it's not going to happen to me, but it can. So I would say, to close out this, our tip would be sign up for one of those alerts with your county. If your county doesn't have it, go check the recorder's site 2 or 3 times a year. Yeah.
You should just systematically know. And again, if you see it on there, it's already going to be too late. It's already happened. I really would like to get somebody from the prosecutor's office in to talk about this, because I know that it is something. You talk about your seniors who may be dealing with this, who are not tech savvy, not aware of this that's happening, and now all of a sudden they need it in order to even to go into assisted living. They now can't sell their house, or they don't own the house anymore of record. There are so many really dire consequences that can take place of this. This is things that cause people to die. This is things that cause people to do really bad things, right? And so not advocating for any of that, trying to prevent any of that from happening. Do your due diligence. If you are not sure and you don't know how to look up any of this, you can reach out to me. I will help you. I will walk you through the steps. We'll look it up and we'll see. Somebody who is tech savvy can set that up for you as a non-tech savvy person, and they at least could be your backup to at least getting that information. But there is a fraud alert notification system out there in our county, I think in Greene County, and certainly within the state. It's something worth looking into.
I feel like, you know how you can lock your credit score?
Yeah.
And so like they can't run a credit check for like a credit card or something, and you have to call and unlock it. Like,
Yep.
I feel like there should be some kind of system like that.
I originally thought that's what the fraud alert system was about, but it is after the fact. So I think that's the next step that we need to push our legislation, our county offices into realizing, is that this is something that we should be able to protect and freeze, so that if I'm going to do something, then I have to authorize it, and it has to be through a party that can validate it. And I think I think it calls into question the quitclaim deeds. If they're just done by individuals, then we shouldn't allow that.
Yeah. So if you are a state legislature and would like to come talk to us about this, we would be more than happy to talk.
Promise, we will be nice.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today on the Real Tea Podcast. If you enjoyed the knowledge and entertainment today, please subscribe and share with your friends. We will be embarking on a journey that bridges the gap between realtors and clients, uncovering the heart and tea of real estate.